Hello, everyone. And it's Cheryl Hickerson of Females in Finance. And this is our second episode of Financial Rockstars. And so, as I was looking at the guests out there, I was excited to. Our first one, we had Arwen Becker, who she refers to herself oftentimes as a financial rockstar. But I also am glad to see my friend Reagan here today from Nudge. And I would love for you to tell everybody a little bit about who you are and a lot about Nudge.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks for having me, Cheryl. It's
Absolutely.
great to be on. It's a pleasure. So I am a former executive director at JP Morgan. Spent really my whole career focused on financial planning. Personal background is that I came from a mixed immigrant family, and spent a lot of time thinking about wellness and how we can make an impact. My father also instilled a lot of behaviors in me around entrepreneurship. So how can I help out on one hand from the learnings from my mom and from my dad? How can I actually turn that at scale and turn it into a business? So throughout my time at JP Morgan, I learned that there's a lot of great practices that are really reserved for the high end of the wealth spectrum, and that really just needs to be available to the broad population, thinking about more than 60% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. And that's really where I wanted to spend my time. So after 12 years at JP Morgan, had a lot of ideas on how we can add value to the broad population. So came up with ways to digitize that and deliver that at scale. So team and I, over the past 2.5 years, have been working diligently on creating AI systems to deliver hyper-personalized recommendations to individuals, help them improve their financial well-being, effectively do a financial plan, help them make the right decisions, and all through credit unions primarily. So helping them grow, build stronger relationships, and build more loyalty with their members.
Credit unions are a very interesting space when you talk about financial wellness too, because they really are sort of the feet on the street, if you will, for everyday
Right.
Americans today. I live in a pretty small town outside of St. Louis, and so we don't even actually live in a town. We live in something called the CPD, which is a consumer populated density. For those who don't know, that means that we don't actually have access to a lot of the things that others just naturally take for granted. Example, maybe trash services. We have to actually order certain trash services to come in because we don't have access to them. The only thing that's helping run a CPD that's in our state are community banks. First Credit Community is a good example. Commerce Bank, which is also a credit union. Those are they are really the hub for smaller spaces like ours. But as you get into bigger areas, the community banks really are the place where people go when they want to talk about money and their money specifically and how to save it. One of the things that I found really fascinating about the work that you do when you talk about financial wellness, I have to say this is a term we didn't even hear 5 years ago, like on the regular. I think we knew like it existed, and I see today a lot of different ways that people describe financial wellness today. In your world, in working with credit unions, knowing that you work in this space of AI, which really scares the bejeebers out of a lot of people, but should and shouldn't at the same time, I would be curious to have you talk a little bit about what you view financial wellness to be today.
Yeah. There's a lot of different perceptions on that.
Yeah.
It really depends on the individual, what it means for them. Is it simply having an emergency fund? That could be it.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it really boils down to having less financial stress, not having to worry about your finances. That's a lot of people that were polled and surveyed on what that means. They came back with that response. What we like to think of it as is financial clarity. Is
Mm.
and sometimes just the clarity reduces the stress. If you understand where you are, am I on track towards building that emergency fund? After that, am I on track towards buying that car so I can take my family to school? But just, really connecting the dots on what's going on in your finances today to your short and long-term goals. And that's where we add value and help people reduce their financial stress. So, again, it really depends on the individual.
Yeah.
but our
You said
focus.
something there that Linda even said. She goes, you should, if it's not already trademarked, you should trademark financial clarity. The thing that I like about what you just said there is the term wellness is very overwhelming, I think, to a lot of people. I know if you said to me, oh, you need to get your health in order, you're thinking of wellness, right? Like that's a whole lot of stuff. But what you're saying is that you're really clarifying what parts that people need to be good at. And I think the other thing that I'm really curious too, and I know that Linda asked the question, but she works a lot in this world too of fintech. So when you talk about AI, this artificial intelligence, she says on here, I'd love to hear how Reagan tells us what areas of AI nudge uses, what you're using in that space. And I think that the other thing I'm kind of curious too with AI, when you talk about this hyper personalized space that you're in, how AI can make a suggestion for an everyday American today when it comes to financial clarity or financial wellness, but financial clarity that makes a lot of sense. I'll give you a good example of what I mean when I ask that question. It, I think that when you use an application that manages your money, it intuitively should be able to look and scour through the things that either you're doing really well, and I think it should say either, hey, you're doing this, maybe you're almost doing this too well. We need you to put some space over here and work on this. That might be a suggestion. But I love reflexive types of questions that AI can come up with too to make you think about your money differently that I might an average person, not maybe in financial services, because this is a space we live in all the time. But how are you using the AI component to this and when Nudge is working with people and their money?
Yeah. So let me actually address the first thing that you mentioned, that financial wellness feels overwhelming. And oftentimes it's overwhelming because you're thinking of all the different pieces and parts
Yes.
that go through it.
Yes.
I spent a good portion of my career coaching financial advisors on helping them create financial plans for their clients. And turns out it's even difficult for them to conceptualize how to create a plan, think about all the nooks and crannies of that plan, and then deliver that. So what we do is we simplify it to just the next step. If you don't have to think about all the different pieces to it, the accounting, the bookkeeping, the taxes, my, tax deferred versus taxable. But what's the next thing that you need to do? Is it that you need to
Mm.
build up an emergency fund? How do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to think about, like, do you have to quantify how much that is? Is it $500? Is it 1 month of saving, 3 months of savings of expenses? So that's where our AI really comes in, is identifying the next step for every single person. And we use various different data points. There's a number of different data points that we get from the credit union itself. So they have a lot of data in their core, which many financial institutions are struggling to make sense of.
Yeah.
We use other data points from our interfaces. So we do have uh, PFMs, personal financial management tools, micro engagement to help them just simply select their goals and organize them. And then there's third-party tools that we use as well. So transaction data, demographic data, there's a number of different things. And then, so of all of that, we put it all together, create the most comprehensive list of opportunity types. What are opportunities that we can engage those individuals based on those next steps? And then we constantly rearrange them. So for instance, we were looking at a use case today of an individual that wanted to build up an emergency fund. We thought the second step after building the emergency fund was paying down debt because we saw the debt.
Yeah.
And we realized, okay, that person actually engaged on our interface and said, no, number 2 priority is buying a car, and that could be get your family from A to B. It
Yeah.
could be something pretty simple. So we can then rearrange that. Okay, now we'll guide them on the car, since that's important. And then each goal, each piece that we're guiding them on, we're using various different behavioral finance elements. So is it speaking to loss aversion? Is it helping them envision their future self? There's a number of different ways that we guide them through the experience, showing them social proof and learning from that. What are ways that they are engaging? What types of content make sense for them? What we're not doing is taking a large language model like ChatGPT and creating
Yeah.
content and spitting it to them. We actually have behavioral scientists, financial experts that are crafting the content. We're just effectively connecting the dots between a whole bunch of data and the content that we've created and say, okay, this is the message that they need to receive. All while focusing on the next step, just that next thing that they need to do.
I love that. One of the things I think about, when I see platforms like yourself, it sounds crazy, but I always think of the Wizard of Oz. It's easy to say we need to get to Oz in order to get to where we need to go. But what's the first step? She had to follow the yellow brick road. Like that was exactly what we're talking about here. And I think that it's interesting because financial wellness, as we just mentioned, might be so overwhelming, but you're able to take it from a tech perspective and really break that down. And through reflexive questioning and reflexive needs, really, if you think about each person being such an individual, then you're able to really narrow that down for them so that they can know what it is that they should be doing. I'm very sensitive to people who think financial wellness, and I'm using air quotes because I don't even think this is what it is. I see that on their website, like, D is for data, B is for bank, C is for credit union. I mean, that's not it. COVID, Christmas things, people are broke. They don't know where to go. They know that they've got all the stuff. How do we get to that next thing? And I also think that you're in a very ripe, cool space, as on the verge of with Mint going away and being able to pick up those clients who were very dependent on that kind of technology. But I think you're doing things very different, vastly different, because of using the AI component and then hyper focusing through those credit unions to do that. I think it's super, super smart.
And I think that budgeting aspect, that's an interesting point because you mentioned mint.com. And
Yeah,
I think one of the reasons why it's going away is because it was a heavy lift. You
exactly.
had to
Yeah,
do a
Linda's
lot of
nodding. Yes. Yeah.
transactions. That is going up so that the efficiency of those transaction categorizations are increasing significantly. So what I would see over the next couple of years, and something that we're currently doing, is helping making the budgeting process simple.
Yeah.
Just link your accounts. We'll tell you what's going on. And then being able to contextualize that. This is where I really see the innovation. I think all budgeting tools would be very simple. The innovation for us is that, okay, you, Mr. Customer, want to buy a home in 6 years. Well, today, you're spending $500 a month dining out. Well, did you know that you can spend $400 a month dining out? And then this will actually help you achieve your home ownership goal 6 months earlier, help you put your kids through a little nicer college, really connecting the dots between the mechanics of your finances today and the long-term goals. So I think there's a lot of evolution towards that level of detail and budgeting as well.
Yeah, I do think, and with women, and I just got to say this too, is Miss Customer too, because a lot of the women are spending money out there, want to know how to spend that money. And we get shamed a lot of times when it comes to money with women. Hey, you're not saving enough. You save too much. You spend too much. You're not spending enough. You're not investing enough. It's just, there's so much mixed information coming back for consumers today, especially with women. And I'm really sensitive to how do we put these tools in their hands, because they are doing a lot of the spending, but they also are the ones who are the big savers. I feel like that I read and I understand. Even in our house, I'm definitely the saver. It's me that's putting those things away, going for the rainy day or the sunny day, as Rachel Fox would correct me to say, because I think that that's very true too. When you talk about this AI, one other question that I have too is it generally agnostic of gender? Is it agnostic of all of that too? I think that that's one of the questions that people wonder, is is it male dominated? Is it female powered? What does that look like through the lens of AI?
Yeah, we're currently not feeding it gender data, so it's not something that's currently included. However, there is an important element of financial planning, and that's one thing that we're doing behind the scenes, is that life expectancy is just different between men and women. So I think it's an important component. Financial professionals and planners will talk about that, and they'll show it in life expectancies and cash flows, but we just leave it out currently, especially when we're dealing in credit unions and financial institutions. Bias is sensitive. However, currently we're not changing language or recommendations based on it's all based on the next step, and it's based on
I love that.
years.
Your next step. It really doesn't matter. That's what I'm
Step.
getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, woman, no matter of age. what we are focusing on, and we have a machine learning model around this, is understanding your financial behavior, not behaviors and engaging, like, clicked open rates and your engagement and those things. It's one thing, but then you also have, are you for instance, an ostrich or a baller? Do you tend to stick your head in the sand and ignore your finances? Or do you tend to be a little bit more flamboyant with your spending or over engage in your finances? That's one thing that we currently have a model on, and we're able to measure that. That will eventually dictate the tone and the pace in which we communicate with you. Because overwhelming certain people with information could tend to pull back and shut off their finances a little bit. So all that to say, there's no gender bias, but we will personalize as much as is needed.
Got it. When the app is being used, and I know that Linda had asked about a demo, we'll make certain we get something and put it into our community so they can see that, because I know you have one on your website, because I was on that. It kind of gave some different pieces of what that looks like. I think all of this is really interesting from the financial advisor's perspective as they use tools like the consumers are using tools like this. Are you able to give access to somebody else to be able to see what you're doing within the app, or is it just private to you only? I don't even know if you have that capability. That just dawned on me.
So right now we are a end user facing tool.
Okay, gotcha.
That's one component of it. The biggest component of our nudge engine is it infuses the messaging through existing communication channels.
Okay.
We're just talking to a credit union this morning that they have enough interfaces. They have a budgeting tool. They have all that stuff. So we are going to take our engine and our repository of nudges and connect the dots and infuse that message into their existing communications.
Okay.
When they recommend a savings account, it's with reason, it's with context. So that's really the power of what we're doing. But to go back to your question, so end user facing tool, we do have a credit union that we're going live with in Q2 for a MSR or banker facing tool.
Okay.
They will be able to collaborate with the end user, and then in that environment they can help them set up their plan.
So if you're a credit union right now watching this, you need to call Reagan, is what I just heard. I think that's fantastic. That's really that's where the change, that's the transformational changes of where you're stepping into and leaning into those credit union situations for them to be able to have those nudges and help get us back to, because remember back in the day when we used to go into banks and like bankers were at the banks, and now today you walk in, very few of them have that, because I think transparently the bigger bank, they don't even have capability to do some of this, even though they might be a bigger bank name. So I think this is really a good way to make transformational change happen in everyday American, especially people like me who live, like I said, in smaller communities. We're dependent on those credit unions. We really, truly are. That's what's closest to us. For me to go to Chase Bank, just to give you an example, I have to drive to St. Louis to get, we don't have access to that in a smaller town like this. Yeah, they don't have those, but we have 2 credit unions. So I think that's really says a lot about the importance of a credit union today.
I agree. Absolutely. And credit unions are absolutely thinking about your financial well-being as a #1 priority.
Yeah.
But to go back to your point is that it's not only us that's thinking about this through this lens. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and JP Morgan have launched interfaces similar to what we are doing with a similar thought in mind. The nudge engine is completely unique, but they're all thinking about this. It's called Life Plan at Bank of America, Life Sync at Wells Fargo, it just launched, and Wealth Plan at Chase. Gotcha. So they know that their customers, we need to help them envision their financial futures. We need to get on the same page with them based on their goals. Because at the end of the day, what financial institutions have been doing, I don't want to say pushing products, but it is pushing products.
It's pushing products. Yeah, I'll say it. It is.
Yeah, and then the goals are completely separate, and we'd only hope that you get to the right person at the branch that's going to care about your goals, make recommendations based on that. We want to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And obviously, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan want to do the same. So we want to help smaller institutions level the playing field from an interface standpoint, and then pump behavioral finance into their messages to
Yeah.
really.
It's interesting. And I will say that's my podcast. I can say what I want. And I think that it is what you just said. It's pushing the product. When I think about, I need a specialized need, I don't go to Chase. I can go into my local branch at First Community Credit Union. I know, and the person who's been the manager there has been there for 6 years. That's how well I know him. His name's Joshua. Hi, Joshua. And so it's one of those things I can go in. Josh knows who I am. I walk in, he says, "Hey," and he'll ask me, because a lot of times I have special requests of things. He goes, "You anything special?" I'm like, "Nope, I can just go on the regular line today." And he's like, "Okay." And then he'll go about, but he knows that. And I think that's the part that talk about the connectedness of stuff, but to be able to take something specialized, what you're doing, and put that into such a personal relationship that I have with our credit union, I think that that's where you just can help them really soar. I know Carol Lindbergh said in the comments that she had a colleague who didn't realize that she had a Dunkin' Donuts problem. And I know we joke about the latte thing, but she was struggling to free up money, it says here, for a disability insurance. And once she was able to go through and look at the expenses through an app, probably through an app or through a Discovery, spending $200 to $300 a month on, eating out and stuff like that. This is the kind of things I imagine software can really nudge you to say,
Yeah.
"Hey, have you noticed you're spending money here?" Or, "Hey, did you know this?" Amazon. It's in our house. It's Amazon. I'm not even going to lie. It's Amazon. He's here every day.
Yeah, it was for me too.
Yeah.
No.
And I should say that we're much better. It's 2024 and we've made a resolution that we have to put everything into the basket. It has to sit there for a week and see if we still really want it. And then if we do, then we buy it. But otherwise, a lot of times I've gone back and go, "What is that?" I don't even remember what that is. So then I've been much better, but I do think that that's been helpful. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, because I think this is an important one of the reasons why we have you here too, is I want to talk about the allyship component when it comes to financial services and financial technology. I can imagine for you, it's pretty often you can walk into a room and see a lot of men. But we are working at Females in Finance at growing the inclusivity when it comes to women, not only in services, but in tech, which is a big space that you spend, you're in that space. I have to say, you've been delightful to have as an ally at Females in Finance. I want to make certain I say that. Linda's nodding her head because I know she does a lot in the roundtable with you all. Talk a little bit about the importance for you of being involved in an organization that is focused on women. Do you feel seen? Do you feel like you're a part of something mission driven, and what more could be doing is for allies for them and for the community at large, so that we do have more women and their voices?
Yeah, no, yeah, I definitely feel like we're seen and heard, and it's great to be a part of a community that has a focus on that. Obviously, there's a lot of things that that are concerning, from the pay gap, the percentage of women in leadership today. It's a good reminder every time that I'm in the Females in Finance meeting that I need to think about the diversity of my team. It's always something that I'm naturally focused on, because I am diverse. Our team is culturally and racially and religiously diverse. But honestly, as we built up the team, we moved so fast. We went from 2 people to 15 inside of 12 months, and it was just, we didn't have the time to think about those resources. So we did, unfortunately, lean male heavy, and it worked out to be about 66% male. And that wasn't certainly not a focus, or not a we didn't do that intentionally. We're fortunate to have just brought on our first female leader.
Awesome.
For Nudge. And thinking back in my career, I've some of the best leaders that I've worked with over the past 15, 20 years have been female.
Yeah.
And for me, there is no difference. I feel like a woman can do the same job as a man. I don't see any reason to pick one over another. So I think there should be more equality and more equilibrium there. So for us,
I appreciate that.
Good reminder. And I think if there's any differences in perceptions, emotional quotient, it's nice to have that variety of perspectives in a meeting. And we've had nudge meetings that it's 8 men in the room. And, now, we have a female leader, we have 5 total women on our team. It's nice to have a variety of perspectives, which I think is absolutely necessary.
Yeah, when you talk about working at credit unions and such, there's a lot of women who work at the credit union, the bank level. When I walk in, oftentimes that is who I am seeing, other than Josh, at my local bank and my local credit union. And so I appreciate the fact of, one, just you being open to talking about what that looks like, because we're here to be all gain and no shame. We want to improve organizations, just to note that you're right. Different perspectives are important, and a variety of backgrounds help grow the bottom line. We see that a lot in every report. When you add women to it, the bottom line grows. And you may not have an answer for this directly today, but I do hope in the future you do. But being a part of Females in Finance is really important to me, because I need to see you there. A lot of times we show up at women's events and it's all women. We know what's going on. So sometimes I'll walk outside and go, hey, you need to come into this room because we need your voice in here. And so being a part of our Male Ally Network and being a part of the FinTech Roundtable that Linda has run for years now, and although I would love to say, yes, we've helped you be more profitable at the end, but even profit comes in a different variety. It's not always money. Sometimes it's perspective, like you said, and opinions. And I hope that you're being a part of Females in Finance, you feel has been valuable to your organization and your growth this past year or so.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've met a lot of great people in your community, and I think that is there's big opportunity there
Yeah.
It is the most powerful community that we're a part of currently, and we're dabbling in various different organizations, but the way that you all present information, think about things that we're all dealing with, it speaks to us, and then the variety of different individuals in the room is pretty powerful from a perspective standpoint. So
I really appreciate that.
I think it makes a lot of sense. And as I mentioned, a great reminder that I need to think about diversity. It's more challenging for a smaller organization than I would say a larger organization. Thinking back, I've seen large organizations that have a big pool of applicants, and you can think about your team and you see the metrics on your team, and then you think about this pool of applicants, and then you have to match that up. We may not have the resources nor the time to go through that sort of exercise, and we just need to find the best person of 3 individuals.
Yeah, I totally can appreciate that. And as you grow, you can be reflective and say, oh, this is where we've had a lot of time in that FinTech Roundtable, which is now part of our Building You program. It's where everybody can come and be a part of it. What I found was, when I got invited to the first tech meeting that we had, I knew nothing, like, other than a little bit. I mean, and then since that time, I now have built an app for Females in Finance. I have done things from technology perspective. And I think, oh, I remember when Reagan and Linda talked about this. I can put that down. Like, because I go back, because I have my own little notebook, because I have like a lot of notebooks. I'm that person. And I can go back and look at the conversations about the user experience or the end result of this. And it's helped me be better in that space. And that's what I think I've seen the biggest differentiator of. I had some of the FinTech Roundtable, participants have said, I never came back and realized that all of our one person said all of the avatars look like men. They didn't realize. They were really looking at them one day going, oh, wait a second, everybody here looks like a man. Let's change those a little bit. Those little nuances, although seem small, they're significant for others who are like, see it, be it.
Yeah.
Type thing, right? Like, you see me. Thank you for that. So I think that's really cool too. But I know I put you a little on the spot there asking that question, but I feel like there's been so much learning that has gone on in that roundtable that you come back a year later and look back and you think, that I've grown from being around other people and learning from them too. And I feel like you and many others have not only done that, but really showcase it in the work that you're doing. So feel good about that. One thing as we get towards the end here, I'm really curious what your looking at into the future, maybe for this year and next year, what does the FinTech trend look like when it comes to financial clarity for nudge and things like that? Can you talk a little bit about what some of the trending things are, what you think some of the future might be that we should be paying attention to?
I think you're still seeing a lot of what we're hearing and feeling is that you're still seeing a lot of tools, very precise tools, budgeting for students, freshmen of college, or a number of debt pay down for millennials or Gen Z, and there's all these. But we've talked to credit unions that they're like, okay, we need to solve for middle income America. Well, we have these 7 technologies. I'm like, wow, okay, so which one are you going to throw at them? And then are you sure they're going to convert or stick on the product? And that's what we're seeing is that if you get 5% adoption of that, that's great at a credit union. So, we're not about let's solve a particular problem for a very narrow market. I think there's big problems for the underserved America. That's where we want to provide a lot of value, and not through 5% adoption of a small component of the market, but how can we really deliver a hyper personalized message that really moves them in the right direction? So for us, we believe wholeheartedly that's where the innovation is. I think you're still going to see a number of different financial management tools, which are getting better, and I think there could be one that stands out that you see like a Monarch, direct to consumer. A lot of people move to Monarch after mint.com. I don't know if they've already launched their AI chat component. That's something that we're building out as well. We'll be able to ultimately be this virtual financial coach that can guide you and help you contextualize, really everything. So I think that's kind of the pie in the sky is, when are we going to get this AI financial advisor, financial coach? I think we will be that, probably the first one for credit unions when they're ready for it, which I don't think they're ready for it.
Linda's clapping for you, by the way.
But for us, we're credit union community is where we live, and we believe that they have the ability to help a lot of people at scale, and we believe this is the particular way that credit unions need to deliver that message to all their members. So that's where our heart is, but there's obviously other innovation out there.
A lot of financial advisors who are listening to this right now, either live or on the replay, if you are in small town USA today, please, please, please talk to you, and you have a connection at a credit union, connect them to Reagan. Because I do believe what you just talked about does affect a very good majority of the flyover states. And there's a lot in the wealth. This is an interesting thing too. When we can clean up and get financial clarity or clean up finances, this is where we make the space for wealth building. This is where we make transformational change and legacy planning, because they're not paycheck to paycheck or just mistake to mistake. I still contend if somebody's bad with $5, they're bad with $5 million. I don't care. We've seen too many people win the lottery and then 2 years later, broke again, right? It's like hocus pocus. It happens again. And they don't know, like, what did I do wrong? And it's because they don't have that. The other thing I'm kind of curious about too with you is, how excited are you to have seen behavioral finance take off in financial services, to be more aware behaviorally of how people behave with their money? Because I found that to be refreshing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm personally excited about it. I mean, it's a lot of what we do. I don't know that I would say that it took off yet. I feel like, in the circles that I've been in, it's this language, but who really understands
There
it?
you go. Linda just said, how do you define behavioral finance?
It's speaking to the individual in the way they need to receive guidance.
Yeah.
And
that's a really good way to describe it.
It's as simple as that. Obviously, there's a lot of elements to it. But I think understanding the message that they need to receive is really the bulk of it. And I think that's where a lot of financial professionals don't really know that yet. I would say the top of the top financial advisors that are focused on it, they're getting value in their books of business from it. But I think this is where ultimately we can take what we've built and add value to those professionals and say, okay, based on this data, here is the financial profile of this individual, the financial behaviors of this individual. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I think the next step is honestly financial planning in the wealth management space. I think financial planning needs to be more widely recognized and practiced.
Yeah.
I even think in financial, like credit unions, exactly what we're doing is create a financial plan for every one of your members behind the scenes. But I think in wealth management, financial planning is the next step. And then I think ultimately, if we can get to a place where financial advisors, professionals are aware, conscious of financial behaviors and being able to speak to that, I think that will really drive, in the example, if you're bad with $5, you're bad with 5 million.
Yeah.
Financial advisors can help them organize the 5 million, but they could still be bleeding that 5 million if they haven't addressed the core problem. And so I think there's still a lot of room for improvement. That's my perspective. But what's your perspective, actually?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I'll tell you my biggest concern is. So too often, I think in financial services, we have shiny objects where someone will put the spotlight on something. And I'll go back to, I'll pick on DEI. DEI was big, 2020. Oh, really big. And now it's wavering. And then there's organizations like ours who stick it out and say, hey, knock, knock. No, wake up. No, we still got to do this. Okay. I think that when I went to conferences, people were talking about DEI. Then it was financial wellness. And then what happened? Then behavioral finance. So we're really big on when I talk about it's taken off. When I look, if I were right now to pull up the last 10 conferences, big conferences in financial services, I promise you there was a Dr. Daniel Crosby speaking on behavioral finance. There were others talking about it. And what I don't want to happen, this is who I in Females in Finance, you might have heard me say this before. We like to take care of the human being because for the human doing of what they do. Behavioral finance is the human being, part of who we are as a being. And it affects, I assure you, our behaviors affect what we do. And if that's the case, financial wellness, financial clarity in your space, they're driven oftentimes by the behavior because something triggered it. An example I used as childhood was my dad was always a big saver. Gotta save. It's part of growing up in the Midwest. He was poor as a kid, so we stuffed up money away all the time. However, I was somebody who I recognized very early on, 13, 14 years old. I feel like that's fairly early, which was I worked. I was babysitting, mowing lawns, doing things for my money. I want to be able to buy certain things for myself too. And so my dad helped me put money into savings and created that behavior. But let me tell you what also he did. The day that we talk about, everybody knows me and my Swatch watch. This is all it came down to is I wanted to go into Famous Bar in St. Louis behind the big counter and buy the Swatch watch because everybody at school had one. Yes, I grew up in the 80s. And I remember I saved my money, very proud of it, walked in, and those Swatch watches back in 1988 were $45. That's a lot of money in 1988. Okay. But I had saved it. And by the time I got my money, I laid it up there. Do you know, I remember my dad vividly disappointed saying to me, you saved all that money just to buy this piece of crap. Do you know that affected me for years later? Because every time I would buy something, I'd be like, is this a piece of crap? I don't know. And so instead of, I had worked for it. And behaviorally, this was my reward for myself after I had saved, I had tithed, I had done everything I was supposed to do. And mind you, paid my bills because in order for me to babysit, my dad used to charge me gas money. Can you imagine that today? But he charged me. He'd pull up to pick me up. My dad would have his hand out. Where's my payment? For if I made $10 babysitting, my dad got paid. And he charged a lot, y'all, just so you know. He charged a lot for that gas. He did actually put the money into an interest-bearing account, bought me a car when I was 17, but there's another story with it. But the point of it is to teach me to pay my due when it came to taxes and things is what he was trying to do. But behaviorally, it affected how I looked at money years later of why I was scared to buy things. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want it's a long answer to the question, but behavioral finance, I feel like is so imperative to the success of financial wellness and products like Nudge to tell me like, hey, did you mean to do that? Or hey, did you know you were doing this? Because then I can go, oh, and it's in the privacy of my own space to be able to have that nudge, right? I mean, it's not like it's on a billboard going down 70 through St. Louis that says, did you know that Cheryl spent such and such on Amazon this month? That's one thing I do love about products like yours, which is in the privacy of my own space, I get to learn. And
Yeah.
then what I do like is the idea of you working with a credit union who can come in and say, I'm not here to shame you for it. Let's
Mhm.
find a solution to it. Okay.
Exactly.
And I think
That's,
that's really important.
and I'll tell you my quick story on that is that and one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about financial wellness and behaviors is that my first lesson on finances was from my mom, who born and raised in India, came to America, and part of westernizing is it realizing, okay, you don't have to live on the minimal. You can actually have things, which was actually a bad lesson because, she ended up, you know, we kind of lived a little bit more plentiful in material
Yeah.
things, and it didn't, the financial lesson of that. She actually handed me a credit card. That was my first thing when I was, 15 years old. That was my first financial lesson. Not a good lesson. So
Mm-hmm.
luckily at 21, I ended up working for a major bank, and I had to unwind those learnings.
Yeah.
And then when I got married, then my wife, it's very similar to your situation. Every time we would go to a store, and I was like, oh, that's cool, only because I had, I had that, I guess, the Amazon mindset from my mom. She was like, oh, do you really need that? Come back in a couple of days and see if you really do. And
Yeah.
and of course she was right, is that I had to just kind of unwind that instant gratification.
I'm totally
So
going to share this clip with your wife. He said, you're right, wife. So anytime come back to this moment, snip it out and go, you said it right
yeah,
here.
he's right.
But my first husband was from Iran, and this was the same thing. They came here and he was like 15, 16 years old with a credit card and swipey every place. And then he meets me, little Miss, Saver from Missouri. And I would be like, do we really need that? What are we doing? Why are we buying a car every year? I mean, there was like such a clash, not just a culture clash per se, but a financial behavior class, a behavior finance, clash that we had, because he
Yeah,
had this idea that his father who'd grown up and had made money, he wanted him to be able to go spend and luxuriously live the lifestyle. And I'm over here, yes, I've saved and I want to have this long-term thing. And we were very much clashing on what that looked like. And so our
right,
poor kids got with mixed signals, because I would say to my son, no, you cannot have an extra box of granola bars this week, because he liked to. Then my husband's buying 50-yard line tickets to go to the Raiders game. And I'm like, wait a second, what?
yeah,
So it
exactly.
has been interesting to watch them grow into adults, because I feel like they've got a little bit of best of both worlds now. So I hope that's
Right.
great for children too. That now my son, who's 36, can say, "Oh, I've worked to earn this money." And
Mm.
he took a lot of heat because holiday came this year, and he bought both of his boys PS. What is it? PS5, the PlayStation 500. Is that right?
Okay.
I don't even know what it
Uh-huh.
is because I don't do it. And his friends were
PS5.
like, "You're crazy." And he goes, "What? I put the money away. I saved it." They had to earn part of it too. So I thought he kind of did a good job in balancing. He had saved
Okay.
it and he bought it and they're enjoying it. So I think there's a way to change from a
Yeah,
legacy perspective what through the
exactly.
work that you're doing. It's that
There's
important.
so much to unpack there. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that, obviously financial education in the United
Yeah.
States it's underutilized. There's
Oh
not
yeah.
enough in
It's
in
subpar at best.
schools. On average, we have half of a class in high school compared to
Yeah.
Sweden, Norway, Denmark, where it starts at first grade and goes all the way through your school years. So I think one thing that we do with credit unions is that we provide financial literacy tools for parents to engage their children. That's just one of the many things that we help them with. So, I think there's that. But then going back to the behavioral finance element of it,
Yeah.
if you have money and you're at the top 20, 30%, you're with the financial advisor, hopefully you have one of these new trendy solutions to guide your financial advisor to give you insight on how to deal with that,
Yes.
buying that car every year compared to, saving that money. But then thinking about the other 70% of the population, you're not going to get
No,
guidance on that unless you have a financial coach, which I think is an interesting topic and something that we aspire to be digitally.
I love that because I did say, Adam Holt and I had this, from Asset Map, we had this conversation. I was on LinkedIn and I'd said, I believe that financial coaches, because financial planners are over here arguing they're the best. Insurance people say that and they're arguing all the time. Financial coaches are just like, I said, they're in like the Trojan horse, just moving past them all. Like and I'll never forget, Adam wrote, he said, I think they're more like unicorns. I said, pick your equestrian. I don't care what it is, but they are the ones that are coming through because they're the feet on the street and saying, hey, and they're doing it so innovatively and fun to a lot of times too. It's you can make financial literacy, financial wellness, behavior finance fun and kind of laugh at ourselves. Cause let's just be honest. We are all weird in our own way. And I think it takes all of us working together. And I love the fact that the varied background of what you're bringing to this, talking about with your mom being, from India and you're coming here. And I think the same happens with my ex-husband being from Iran and the culture, the things that they were looking for, because I think it's also remiss to just think that you're going to walk into the credit union and that person's going to understand you culturally too, because there are a lot of cultural issues too with when it comes to money, especially as you look at bringing and mixing, commingling families and ideas and things. So that's why I'm so excited about your AI component of Nudge, because it doesn't really, it's like, I think it kind of ebbs and flows for how that person's behavior is to make the suggestions. And I think that'll help us overcome some of this. This is just so fascinating.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
fascinating.
absolutely.
I love it. I have to ask this question. So if you had to walk on stage, what's your song? I'm a big song freak. I love music, love music. So what's your walk on stage song that just is going to get you pumped up?
There's a lot of different songs depending on the year. I think this year for me and my team, it's Eye of the Tiger.
Eye of the Tiger. He went
Again,
old school. I
yeah,
love
yeah.
it.
Well,
I'm
we're
old
coming
enough
up
to
right
remember when it
before
was new.
What's that?
I said, I'm old enough to remember when that song was new. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I love it. All right. So I'll just call you Rocky from now on. Is that what we're going to do?
Yeah,
Rocky,
yeah.
you run
Or
up the stairs,
Sylvester. Either
stand
way.
up. Love it. Well, this has been such a treat for all of us, for me especially too, just to get to know you more one-on-one like this and have questions
Definitely.
from the audience. And I appreciate your allyship and so much. And I appreciate what you bring to FinTech in our space too, because it really does make a difference, the work that you're doing. And I just have nothing but nice things to say about you, and I'm grateful.
Thank you. Thank you. We're so excited to be a part of your community and always love to learn from you all and participate in any way that you can. So you have champions out of Nudge in our team.
I appreciate it. Well, anything we can do to be supportive, let us know. And we'll make certain we get this out and circulated to everyone. Linda, thank you for all your questions too. She was here to offset a lot of the AI talk too. I didn't ask her to, but she made me think about some extra things on it as well. So we will be seeing you around, Reagan. You take care of yourself.
You all as well.
All
Thanks,
right.
Cheryl.
Bye, friends.
Bye-bye.